used to believe peace could be planted right in your own backyard. But when I turned my dull front lawn into a vibrant flower garden, my HOA decided it was a crime. They fined me $10,000 for unauthorized vegetation. $10,000. At first I cried, then I got angry, and then I got even, because when they tried to destroy my garden, I found a loophole that let me buy their entire community. You want to know how a single mom with a laptop and a love for daisies brought an entire HOA to its knees? Sit tight, because this is the story of how I buried them with their own rules. I'm Rachel Porter, 38, single mom, and graphic designer working from home in a quiet cul-de-sac called Silverwood Estates. When I bought my modest 3-bedroom house, it was supposed to be my sanctuary, a new start after a messy divorce. I didn't have much, just my son, Ethan, my work, and my love for gardening. Digging into the soil after long days at the screen felt like therapy. Silverwood was perfect. Almost. The streets were spotless, lawns identical, mailboxes matched, all thanks to the Silverwood HOA, a board of 5 neighbors who took themselves far too seriously. They called themselves the guardians of community standards. Everyone else called them the neighborhood Nazis. The president, Linda Marsh, was a retired real estate agent with an obsession for uniformity. She'd measure grass height with a ruler, literally. And if you dared to paint your shutters off beige instead of Silverwood sand, she'd send a violation letter within hours. When I first moved in, I tried to be friendly. I went to the HOA welcome meeting, brought cookies, even offered to design a new community website for free. They rejected it, saying individual creative expression isn't part of our aesthetic vision. So I kept to myself until that spring when I decided to do something just for me. Instead of the dull, patchy grass in my front yard, I planted a pollinator garden. Sunflowers, lavender, daisies, roses, everything Ethan and I loved. It was alive, colorful, and buzzing with bees and butterflies. Neighbors stopped to compliment it. Kids took pictures for school projects. Even the mailman said it was his favorite house to deliver to. For 3 weeks, I felt proud, like my home finally belonged to me. Then one morning, I found the first HOA violation notice taped to my front door. Unapproved landscaping, immediate removal required, fine $200 per day. I thought it had to be a mistake, so I called Linda. Linda, it's just flowers. It's clean, maintained, and helps pollinators. She sighed like I told her I'd paved the yard with garbage. Rachel, Silverwood has an approved color palette and lawn policy. Gardens disrupt uniformity. I laughed. So flowers are banned? Not banned, controlled, she said. You can plant up to 6 bushes and 10 linear feet of approved flora. It sounded insane, but she wasn't joking. That was the first crack in my perfect neighborhood. At first, I ignored the notice. I figured it'd blow over. Maybe Linda was just having a bad day. A week later, I received a certified letter demanding payment of $1,400 in daily fines. My stomach twisted. I called the HOA office again. This time, Linda didn't answer. Instead, Mark, the HOA treasurer, told me bluntly, "You're in violation. Pay the fines or we'll place a lien on your property." A lien? Over flowers? I tried appealing. I showed up to the next HOA board meeting, polite, prepared, hopeful. But when I walked in, it felt like a courtroom. 5 people sat behind a folding table with clipboards, arms crossed. Linda smiled that smug HOA smile and said, "State your case." I explained how my garden was well kept, how I'd followed guidelines, even showed photos. The crowd of neighbors behind me nodded in agreement. Then Linda said, Rachel, Silverwood's identity relies on uniform appearance. You've altered community aesthetics. We can't allow exceptions. I wanted to scream. Instead, I said, "So you'd rather look like a parking lot than a home?" Gasps, murmurs. Linda's smile vanished. 2 days later, a new notice arrived, this time with a $10,000 fine for continued non-compliance. They also threatened legal action. $10,000! I couldn't pay that, not as a single mom. They were trying to crush me, to make me sell and move out. When I refused, the HOA lawyer sent a foreclosure warning. They were going to take my home over flowers. That night, I cried harder than I had in years. Ethan hugged me and said, "Mom, they hate your garden because it's prettier than theirs." And somehow, that made me smile, because maybe he was right. When people are desperate, they either break or they build. I decided to build, quietly, strategically. I spent nights researching HOA laws, property rights, and state statutes. I found forums where other homeowners shared horror stories. Then I discovered something shocking. Silverwood's HOA wasn't owned by the city. It was technically a private nonprofit corporation, meaning it had shares, bylaws, and voting rights. And guess what? Several homeowners had stopped paying dues out of protest, meaning their shares were delinquent and available for acquisition. I could legally buy those shares. So I started small. I reached out to neighbors who hated the HOA as much as I did, people like Dan, the retired vet, and Marcia, the widow, who got fined for having a flagpole. I offered to cover their overdue HOA dues if they'd sign over their voting shares to me. Within 2 months, I quietly gained control of 51% of the HOA's voting rights. Then I called a meeting. Linda was livid. She accused me of manipulation. "You can't just take over our community," she hissed. I smiled. Actually, according to Section 7B of Silverwood's charter, I can. I motioned to the lawyer I'd hired with a small business loan. He handed over the documents. Linda's face turned pale. I had just voted myself in as the new HOA president. My first act as president? Suspending all pending fines. Every unjust lien, every ridiculous violation, gone. Next, I called an emergency audit of the HOA's finances. Turns out, Linda and Mark had been paying themselves administrative bonuses. Over $60,000 misused. I reported it. The state attorney's office opened an investigation. Within a month, both were removed from the board and faced embezzlement charges. The news spread fast. Neighbors who once feared the HOA now cheered. I walked out to check my mail one morning and someone shouted, "Rachel, you saved us!" But I wasn't done. The same week Linda's house went on the market to pay her legal fees, I made a bold move. I bought the vacant community clubhouse and surrounding lots under my LLC. That made me the legal property owner of the HOA's land assets, which meant the HOA now paid me for maintenance, access, and rights of use. The woman they fined for flowers was now their landlord. A year later, Silverwood looks nothing like it used to. Front yards bloom with flowers, kids play freely, neighbors smile again. We rewrote the bylaws, no more arbitrary color palettes, no more petty fines. The new motto? Freedom with respect. Sometimes I sit on my porch with Ethan and watch the butterflies drift over the garden that started it all. He still teases me saying, "Mom, you didn't just plant flowers, you planted justice." And maybe he's right. Because sometimes the best revenge is simply to grow something beautiful where they wanted to destroy it. So, if your HOA ever tries to crush your spirit, remember my story. They fined me $10,000 from my garden, and now I own their community. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and tell me your own HOA nightmare in the comments. Who knows, your story might be next.